Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand on the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going to the city website and clicking on the meeting agendas link. Public comments. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out name and address slips and give them to the Planning Commission secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act, state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. Do we have any public?
Yeah, but it looks like it's referencing on number 4.
Oh, this is reference, okay, number 4. So I open it for public comments on anything that is not on the agenda.
Did you have 2 items that you had? Just number 4?
Number 4, okay. Thank you. Okay. Then I will close public comments. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. We're going to start at this end. Mr. Garcia.
I haven't attended any meetings since our last one.
Max?
I had to miss last meeting for some health concerns, but that has been taken care of now, so I'm back. So I just wanted to say thank you guys, and I'm glad to be back.
Max, it's good to have you back. Yeah, we missed you. And so I have attended no meetings, and I will pass it on to Leslie.
I have not attended any meetings since our last, but I would like to say that it is good to see you, Max, and I'm glad that you're doing okay.
Okay. Ms. Cure?
I have not attended any meetings.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Consent calendar, we have the approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of September 19th, 2023. Has everybody had an opportunity to read through those minutes?
Yes.
I go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cure,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana,
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker,
Aye.
and Chair Krushat.
Aye.
5-0 approved.
Okay. No items to remove from the consent calendar for discussion. On to public hearings. And I'll pass it on to staff as we talk with legal access.
There we go. So what we are proposing on Development Code Amendment 23-bunch of zeros 14 is an amendment to our development code pertaining to legal access and dedications. I'm not going to read all of this, but basically what this boils down to is we have situations in the city. I just happen to grab one section of the city at random here, where if someone were to want to build a home in a residential area, but is essentially landlocked, we have been faced with 2 administrative choices. One is to wait and to mandate that this particular property get access of some kind to a public street. And in this particular instance, it would be several property owners that they have to negotiate with. Or on the flip side is to issue the permit once all remedies by the applicant have been exhausted, to say, yes, you can have a building permit, but we cannot guarantee you legal access. And you acknowledge you don't have legal access. We've gone back and forth on the city on this. So what staff is recommending is that we go ahead and issue the building permit with, but require the builder to sign a waiver and say you acknowledge the fact that you don't have legal access at this time. And we'll go and issue it, but you don't have legal access. That being said, we recommend that the Planning Commission find the code amendment exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward the recommendation to the City Council for adoption. The alternative is to not do it this way and require every potential home builder to get legal access, even to these landlocked parcels. but we recommend this.
Do I have any questions from the commission for staff? Okay. Keith, can I just go over one thing, and it's like, and this may be for our audience as well as this, when we talk about ministerial or discretionary approval of development projects, so that would largely be up,
Yeah, ministerial is basically building permits, okay? That means if you meet the code, you get the permit.
right?
That's what ministerial means. You meet the code, you get the permit. Discretionary means there is, for instance, a conditional use permit or something that requires a higher level of authority than just staff. It could be a conditional use permit. It could be a subdivision of some kind. That's what discretionary would mean.
Well, I understand that, but when we get to requirements for street dedication, for the improvements, that's going to be decided on a case-by-case basis with the size of the project.
It depends on what the project is and
Yeah.
the size of what the property is and what they're proposing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I have no more questions from our commissioners, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Open for public comment. Vino, hi.
Hi,
Hey.
I have a question for Keith. If my land is landlocked, why would you give me a building permit to build and give me a false impression? I build and then I got no access. I might want to build cash and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, we've been.
I have an abandoned building sitting there, which might become a city nuisance.
This is something we've been struggling as city staff for a while because, as you can see, some parts of the city were plotted out a long, long time ago
Huh.
without city streets. If we don't allow the building permit, the city is essentially taking that property. So we either deny them the right to build, or we allow them to build with the waiver. So we're recommending that we allow them to build.
Why wouldn't the city go to the neighbors that have access, street access, and say, okay, you have to dedicate X amount of,
Because that would be because that would, in that particular instance, it wouldn't be the city's, if someone wanted to build, if someone wants to build something, it is generally their responsibility to secure access. If you're looking at a single-family home that's landlocked out there, generally speaking, that may not be possible for whatever reason. But we are requiring them to make the effort to get the access.
I'm just trying to understand the reasoning. I mean, why would you give me a permit? That's the
If-
only, I mean, I'm,
Vino, if there's a landlocked piece of property and you own it,
yeah,
and you're trying to contact owner A, B, C, and D,
all right.
and you can't get a hold of D, you can't get next of kin of D, you can't get anything of D, you can't build. Unless we do this process and we say, hey, look, for owner D, you've not secured legal access. We're gonna give you the ability to build your home or build whatever you're gonna build. You need to know that owner D could raise up in 5 years and say, hey, no, I didn't give them access to this property. And then you have to work with owner D to secure your access. But this is giving you the ability to build, and with the understanding that you don't have full legal access to the property.
Yeah, but
Does
I
that
mean,
make more sense?
yeah, but I mean, Commissioner Max, you actually giving me a false impression by giving me a building permit. It's better for you not to give me a building permit and say, hey, you know what, you don't have access, you landlocked, you're gonna leave it vacant, than
Yeah.
a guy like me having a landlocked and thinking, you know what, it's vacant, let me trespass and build a house, and 5 years later, somebody comes and says, no, I'm sorry, you have no access.
Well,
I mean, that's my take.
I think, but you still have the opportunity to go to neighbors that are next to you, ask for right-of-ways, talk to the owner of that property, and work that issue.
Then I'm Commissioner, Distinct Chairman, what the city should say, until you don't have the given authority to use or to have access, you can't build.
Right.
This way, you're just creating more problems.
Understand?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other public comments concerning this item? Then I will close public comments. And I bring it back up to the commission. Any more questions for staff? Okay. Then do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we find the project exempt from CEQA and adopt the resolution to recommend forwarding to city council.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll a second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote when Shelley's ready.
So sorry. Sorry about that. Can you
Okay.
just let me know who made the motion in a second?
Motion was made by Max,
I made the motion.
and Ms. Cure made the second.
So sorry about that.
Commissioner Cure?
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia?
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana?
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker?
Aye.
Chair Krushat?
Aye.
5-0 approved.
Next item, development impact fees. And staff, I turn it over to you.
All right, so what you're seeing before you is Development Code Amendment 23 dash bunch of zeros 1, which is proposing a development code amendment pertaining to development impact fees. In the past, we have collected street improvement fees. This will then be replaced by a development impact fee. The fee, there was a fee study that was conducted by Wilden Financial Services, completed earlier this year, which was approved by the City Council on September the 12th of this year, basically just a few weeks ago. The next steps are to modify the development code to eliminate the street impact, or the street frontage fee, and to adopt the fee through a fee ordinance. The fee ordinance is strictly a City Council function, but the Planning Commission has purview over the development code. For the Planning Commission's edification, this is the amount of the fees that were recommended by the fee study. Again, this will have to go forward to the City Council for their official recommendation. What you're seeing before you is some cleanup in the development code, replacing the street impact fee or improvement fee with this development fee, and all references in development code should now reference a development impact fee. Again, for the Planning Commission's edification, the fees that would be collected on new developments would be allocated for improvements on these streets. I'm not going to read them all, but basically these are the major streets throughout the city. So we recommend that you find this development code change exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward the recommendation to the City Council for adoption.
Do I have any questions from the commissioners for staff? Okay. I'm going to make one comment. I've worked with Keith on an issue way back when, which was we had a specific Plan 10, which had a very unusual equation that we finally got rid of, and I think that this is the way to go. It's a very simple, we've got a study that backs up how we got to those fees. It's easy to understand, and I appreciate the work that your staff has done. Any more questions? Okay. Then I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Does anybody wish to comment? Then I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission and staff. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt the development impact fees. Recommend that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward a recommendation to the city for adoption of the development code amendment.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cure?
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia?
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana?
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker?
Aye.
Chair Krushat?
Aye.
5-0 approved.
The next item we have is vacation home rentals. And it is at this point that, as a vacation home rental owner, I will be recusing myself from this discussion. And I will be turning it over to my very able chair, Vice Chair, Max Walker. And Leslie will be helping him out. Max, welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad you're here. Right.
Are you out for the evening?
There are no other items that I don't think we have, unless you need, absolutely need me back. I will leave you with this in your very able hands. Thank you.
Night.
First, I'm gonna ask everybody to take it easy on me. I'm just a week out of the hospital, so take it easy, please. Take it away, Keith.
All right. So vacation rentals are always an issue of discussion, and it's quite an in-depth discussion that we can bring forward. The Planning Commission has had a series of workshops on several subjects within Development Code for vacation rentals already. So I'm going to spend a few minutes restating what the issues were and what the Planning Commission at that time determined. We have 2 new members of the Planning Commission. So I'm also going to say that just because the Planning Commission decided at that time that was the opinion, you don't have to stay that way. Okay, if the Planning Commission has a different direction, then please give us that direction. Let me walk through these one thing at a time. There was a discussion, direction from the City Council for us to look at reduction of the liability insurance for vacation home rentals. The City Council has since, although the Planning Commission recommended to keep it in, the City Council voted to eliminate it, at least as an interim basis until this Development Code amendment catches up. The reasoning behind that was that the liability insurance was not for the city itself, it was for the property owner and their business. So since the city was not involved in the insurance, or was not claimed to be an also insured, the City Council determined that that particular liability insurance should not be a requirement. The discussion on the number of vacation home licenses per parcel. It was suggested, well, there are basically 2 different ways to approach vacation home licenses where you have more than one residence on a parcel. One is to require each building within that parcel to get its own vacation home rental license and permit, or we can mandate that one vacation home rental permit covers the entire property, but it must be leased as a whole. You cannot, if you have one vacation home rental permit on a property where you have multiple units, like for instance a primary and a secondary unit, you cannot lease them out separately. You need to lease them out as a whole. The good neighbor class, there was quite a bit of discussion on who is required to take the good neighbor class and at what time. At the time, the commission consensus was that the VHR applicant is required to take the class on an annual basis. We do have a letter with regards to that, and which I believe we'll get to here in a little bit. As in the past, we have not issued conditions of approval for vacation home rental permits. It was the recommendation of the Planning Commission that we start including those, so we're modifying the Development Code to require basically development standards and performance standards as far as the condition, part of the conditions of approval. There was a suggestion to lower the limit of vacation home rental licenses per permittee. Currently, the ordinance is 5 per permittee. At the time, the commission consensus was to leave that number at 5. So we did not modify the draft ordinance. Single-family residences built for vacation home rental. That was the Planning Commission's recommendation that as soon as a single-family residence has been issued a final inspection, then they can apply for a vacation home rental. There are also some comments with regards to that. We can revisit if the commission views it to, or wants us to. National Park Buffer Zone. The National Park Buffer Zone has to do with changes in zoning. That's our interpretation of it, having more intense zoning, so we did not modify the development code to reference that particular one. Density per neighborhood. This has caused quite a bit of discussion, and I'm happy to elaborate. And we did say that it was difficult / impossible to implement, and I believe those were the words that came out of the Planning Commission last time. So those were the words we moved forward, but we're happy to elaborate. So we did not make any particular changes to the vacation rental ordinance per the Commission's direction. Response time for nuisance complaints. The suggestion was to increase that. The consensus at the time was to leave it as is, and I believe our code enforcement staff was here at the time. We do have code enforcement staff here as well, so we did not modify that. Storage of recreational vehicles. There was some discussion as to whether or not a home that has a vacation rental permit can have recreational vehicles stored on the property, because we have seen instances in the past where people were using the recreational vehicles and sleeping in them and leasing them out as an extra room. The determination was from the commission, or the recommendation was, that the RVs can still be stored on the property, but they cannot be utilized for as part of the vacation rental permit. You cannot sleep in them. Okay, so there was additional discussion on issuances of additional permits such as film or temporary use permits on vacation rental permits. The commission at the time was that the vacation rental permittees may apply for temporary use permits such as a wedding or film permits. So we did not make any changes to the development code per your recommendation. For the commission's edification, the city has a maximum of 500 vacation rental permits citywide. Other jurisdictions do things differently. This is the way our jurisdiction does it. At the highest number that I could find within the last year, there were 484 permits, and that was the peak was in June of this year, June 22nd, 2023. Since that time, there has been a decrease of about 1 to 2, on average, vacation licenses a week. As of earlier today, I ran a quick report. There are now 458. We are not seeing the huge influx of vacation rental permits that we did in the last year or two. In fact, we're seeing a decrease. There are 7 applications that are pending. So even if all of them were issued, we're still well below the maximum of 500. Okay. Our recommendation is that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward a recommendation to the City Council recommending the Development Code Amendment. Now, I've mentioned this in prior Planning Commissions. This is our recommendation. If the Planning Commission wishes to give us further different direction, you may do so. We need to be very clear what that direction would be if it's not our staff recommendation, though. So whatever your recommendation is, we will forward it out to the City Council.
All right, I'll bring it back up here. Does anyone have any questions or comments for staff?
So we'll discuss some questions and then we'll read.
Yeah, once
we get to
it, before we do the open to the public, we'll read it.
Okay.
I have a question. So as of right now, the Airbnb permit is for the entire property, not broken up into separate, or is it?
It wasn't clear it's not clear in the current code.
Okay.
And so that's why we're recommending the clarity in that particular situation.
Okay.
Because we have had instances where there are multiple buildings on one property. So the question is, do we issue multiple vacation rental licenses, one for each building? Or do we do it one for the property? So the commission consensus at the time was one for the property.
And does that mean the person, so if a family is there, they can't sleep in the other property because of the entire property or the other house?
The other, in theory, if you go one per property, the entire property must be leased.
Cool.
And I have
They would not be able to lease them out separately.
Yeah, I have a question about how many existing licenses have multiple now? Like, has this already been established for the 400 plus that are there?
I don't have that immediate number, but I can tell I believe it's less than 10 or so.
A few more than that.
A few more than that.
Yeah, we do have property owners that have 2 licenses. Two,
And so for-
sometimes even 3.
Are they on the same parcel?
Yes.
Okay.
And so would this change their
No.
license now, or would it already be?
Forgive me if I'm wrong,
Mm.
but, those would already, those licenses would maintain until they were closed out, and then they would not be allowed.
So even when they're renewing, so they're allowed to continue, they have their, until they no longer are licensed, okay. And then, I watched the workshop, I just kind of wondering, I can't remember like why that decision was made.
It's been a few months.
Okay, I know,
It's if you have multiple, I believe the thought process, and the commission can speak up and clarify if you like. If you have multiple licenses on the property, if you lease them out separately, you could cause conflicts even within that same parcel, because you're leasing them out to different entities. You could have family one staying in the main building and a second family staying in the second building. Whereas if you just have one permit and they're leased all at the same time, you have one group that's leasing it.
I think it was kind of like there's a community that's speaking up about almost running like a motel, and if there's multiple homes on one parcel in a certain area, is that running like a mini motel in my community or in my neighborhood? And then another concern is, what difference does it make if there were short or long-term rentals, and I had each guy in a different house? It's 4 different rentals on the same parcel, so why is it particular to a short-term rental that we limit it to 1 per? So it's the great debate, and then some of the commission decided, well, let's just do 1 parcel. So we're maybe negating some of that concern of a mini motel in the middle of my community, or the idea that that could happen again. But then that argument still stands of, well, what if it was 4 different long-term rentals? Or the cars are gonna be there if I rented it out to 4 different people and they each had 2 cars each, or, and that street parking's allowed and you could park wherever you want on the street, which was established. So it's just something that when it comes to vacation home rentals, the concern seemed to be more of avoiding that mini hotel in my neighborhood.
okay. And so I guess my clarification, and I understand that now, and also his question about, well, then it limits the fact that now as a homeowner, I can't rent my extra space, right? If I'm just someone who's living there and wants to make the extra space, right? That was.
You
what's
could, it's
clear
just the assumption of having multiple permits for, so say you have like 4 little buildings and you live in this one and you rent out this, as it's written now, and the suggestion to move forward to city council is that it would be 1 rental. So multiple people could come and sleep in all these different bedrooms, but it's 1 rental. It's not 3 different people getting to rent out the other 3 available.
Okay. And then the good neighbor one is,
The class annual?
that's the class.
Mhm.
So the decision is like, you have to do the same class every year?
Right. Do we have someone from Desert Beacon? I don't.
Susan was working on that, but I thought when we talked at the last workshop, we were gonna give you an option to do like a refresher or something online, just with code changes or whatever, not like taking the whole class.
Okay.
So that is, but technically speaking, it's per ordinance, it's a class.
Right, and it was just something that, wow, this changes so much, or we're continuously updating the code, and instead of assuming that everybody reads the code and is in full understanding, that maybe once a year they got that understanding of, oh, hey, that changed, oh my gosh, I didn't know that changed, good thing I read that, and I'm not gonna be in violation of jeopardizing my permit. So that was the idea of doing it annually. It's just, and it could have been like a little touch-up class, like, okay, you just had it last year, okay, it's just gonna be like a renewal, kind of like a refresher, touch point of, since you've taken these codes have, or this code has been updated, or this law passed in California, now we adjust our code to this, or what have you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the requests to eliminate that class, the annual class, are coming from those who have had licenses for a long time.
Mhm.
And I can understand their point of view, but the direction from the commission viewpoint is exactly what you just said. There's changes in state law, there are changes in ordinances. We need to get them updated.
Right, so it kind of was a consensus that we would do that catch-up class annually, because we had even thrown around, well, you have to get your building inspected every 3 years, and do we just tag it on to a refresher every 3 years? But the concerns that the community raises, that code enforcement raises, it could address those concerns sooner than prolonging it to a 3-year mark, so.
Okay. I think that helps clarify. I think I have more thoughts, but wanting to hear public comment.
Okay, so we're gonna open the public comment, but we have 3 letters to read in first, so Leslie's gonna help me out reading in those letters, because I'm not sure I could get through them with my lung capacity, so take it away, Leslie.
Okay, so we have an email from Cindy Bernard, and says, please read in the public comment. All right, so dear Planning Commission members, unfortunately, a big family birthday is preventing me from attending. We are going to see the GameStop movie. I was on the STR Ordinance Advisory Committee, and I commend you on the progress you've made so far in committing to fair regulations of short-term rentals. I have 2 points for you to consider today. First, please address the issue for purpose-built short-term rentals. These are structures that are not built to be residences. They are designed to be short-term rentals from the ground up. I am asking that you add a 3-year waiting period before new construction can be permitted for STRs. Yes, that's brief, but most long-term leases are renewed yearly. An example of the need for rentals is located behind me, where a large house is rented by Marines who cycle in and out of it as they are stationed here, then rotate to other locations. Please consider giving people an opportunity to live in the new construction before it becomes a short-term rental. Secondly, it's not fair to permit residents to be surrounded by commercial STRs, which is why council directed you to address density. There are 2 solutions to this problem. Either allow moratoriums in the most affected neighborhoods until density eases, or come up with a system to prevent density in the first place. When I was on the committee, I proposed using adjacency because it's easy to see when STRs are next door to each other, or when a parcel for sale is next door to an existing permitted property. After all, there is a sign in front of the STRs. In fact, I ran this idea by Travis Clark, the prior community development director, and he said that managing density by not allowing STRs to be next door to each other was feasible. Next door meaning not allowing STRs on adjacent parcels. I don't understand why Keith disagrees. Perhaps the issue is curing existing next door STRs. Well, those would be grandfathered, and if a next door permitted STR doesn't renew the permit or sells, it becomes ineligible for a permit until the STR is adjacent to either doesn't renew or sells. So I am asking you to send the density back to staff and insist they look at adjacency as a solution, especially since we were directed by council to deal with the density. If staff still says it's impossible, then can we look at a moratorium system, perhaps based on census tracts? Thanks so much for your consideration of suggestions. Best, Cindy Bernard, member of STR Ordinance Advisory Committee. All right, you guys ready for the second one? This one is from Jenny Malopoulos. Dear Planning Commission, please have this read during discussion of VHRs regarding good neighbor classes. Regarding the Good Neighbor class requirement, I believe that the requirement to do this annually is excessive. Once a VHR owner has taken the class, they understand what it is to be a VHR license or understand to be a good neighbor. Having to repeat the class every 5 years should be good enough to maintain your license or licenses. We want to be a city that is pro-business and not subject current or potential business owners to overly burdensome regulations. Thank you for your consideration. Jenny and George Malopoulos on Baseline, 29 Bombs. This is from, it looks like a letter typed from Susan Peplow. So as a planning commission reviews, once again, the recommendation for the city council, either consider the following changes to the ordinance. 1941-013, limit. Reconsider the recommendation to limit the number of VHRs to 1 per parcel. Rather recommend the continuance of the VHR cap as the determining factor for eligibility. Some properties are quite large and or have existing structures in place. The allowance of multiple VHRs, providing there are licenses available, could help homeowners offset the cost of VHRs, providing there are licenses available, could help the home. Am I just reading this again and again? Sorry. Purchase, property taxes and upkeep. Letting the current ordinance stand may help in supporting those who plan to return to the area for retirement and those who utilize the property for the part-time use. So sorry, Susan. I'm going to continue this. 1941-065 issuance. Item G, in regards to the noise mitigation plan, redact, keep on file. There currently is no field or ability to upload any documents on CitizenServe. 1941-70, operating standards. Letter D, rental agreement, item number 2, consider rewording to require ID verification of the primary adult occupant of the vacation rental. You may be unaware that in regards to Airbnb specifically, their terms of service reign unless a municipality requires something special. For instance, the city's requirement for a rental agreement allows hosts to request off-platform customer rental agreements. Without this item in the ordinance, any such request would be disallowed on Airbnb and against their terms of service. The same holds true for ID verification. Airbnb, VRBO, and other platforms claim guests are identification verified, but hosts cannot see this verification. The ability to personally verify ID can help ensure that the person staying at the home in this home is the person on the reservation. The requirement of an ID verification is taking what is in the current ordinance of asking for an address and supercharging it, providing operators with better security measures and host compliance. Thank you for your consideration, Susan Peplow. Sorry about that, guys. That was rough.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and open the public comment now. First, I have Deanna Perez.
Good evening. So I own a pretty reputable cleaning business. And if you guys take away the multiple permits for one parcel, it's gonna affect my business. And also I have 3 to 4 clients right now that are literally in the works of trying to build onto their properties as well. So when they sell them, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they go to sell these properties, if they do, then the next go around, those people that buy cannot have multi-permits for the one parcel. So it affects my business tremendously from going from one income on a parcel to multiple. So I was not understanding why you can't just keep at least one or do one permit, but then have it multi-unit, like here's the permit for this property, this parcel, but it comes with Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, if that makes any sense. Versus taking it all away and saying, no, you have to rent out these 3, 4 properties to one person. It's not gonna happen unless it's like some sort of big venue. So I'd say to just take into consideration doing something where it's not gonna affect not just the people that own the property, but those that work within the Airbnb, short-term rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kat Tolly Jones.
Hi, Kat Tally Jones. I'm glad to see our new commissioners. I haven't stood before you yet, and I'm pleased to be here. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about your recommendation to the City Council about the STR code. I'm speaking specifically to the recommendation that single-family residences built as VHRs can immediately apply for a VHR permit after inspection. Citizens of 29 Palms desperately need housing. The equity and social justice element of the development code that the Planning Committee just sent to the City Council speaks eloquently of the lack of affordable and decent housing in 29 Palms. Households are considered cost burden when they spend more than 30% of their income or rent, mortgage, or other 30% of their income on rent, mortgage, and other housing needs. And Table 1 of the equity and social justice element shows that in most census tracts, the housing burden on residents in 29 Palms is worse, much worse than the state average. 61% of the housing units were built before 1989. You might remember that my husband and our neighbors and I contested the granting of a VHR permit to new construction that's next to our residence. This 5-bedroom, 2,393 square foot building constructed under a single-family home permit is just one case of massive buildings operating as STRs within our residential neighborhoods. The lack of a residential requirement in STR ordinances incentivize building these monstrosities instead of encouraging developers to build needed residential homes. It does seem that the tide of new construction of STRs has ebbed. TOT income is down, but I want to remind you that Evoke Modern, the developer of the building we call the Mausoleum by us, and 4 other properties in Indian Cove, owns many other properties in 29 Palms. I checked the APNs this afternoon. Evoke Modern has 15. An LLC called DesX, whose principal is Dan Singh, the same as Evoke, owns 8. DR20, which is the same, owns 4. You only have to look at Joshua Tree, especially behind, say, Mas o Menos near the 29 border, to see that the construction of new, massively scaled units by Evoke is still going gangbusters. Because affordable housing is so urgently needed, I request that STR permits are not granted until a new single-family residence has been owner-occupied or rented long-term for at least 3 years. Thank you.
I have a quick question. How does that, if we make them rent it out for 3 years or whatever given period of time, how does that prevent the housing crisis? Because in 3 years, they're going to say, okay, now you must leave my home. Now I'm going to do a short-term rental.
Well, I'd be hopeful that some of the initiatives now to build housing that I've heard the City Council speak about will have taken effect and that they'll fill in the gap. I would question whether something that's 5 bedrooms and 2,393 square feet is a house. When we spoke before, we called these units of dispersed boutique hotels. But living next door to one now, as I have for several months, it seems ridiculously out of scale for housing.
True, but I just don't think delaying going from building to STR to you have to rent it for 3 years, I don't think that solves anything. It just kicks the can down the road a little bit till we're dealing with this problem in 3 years.
Well, I'm hopeful that down the road there would be more housing available to people. We have several initiatives, as I understand, for this to happen. So that would give us some breathing room and allow for more reasonably sized houses and more affordable housing.
Okay. Next, we have Heidi Hurd.
Good evening. Adjacency. It's a simple definition. Next to or adjoining something else, adjacent rooms, having a common vertex or a common side. Implementing an adjacency clause into the STVHR ordinance would help address the density issue that has thus far been ignored and has resulted in several saturated neighborhoods. I think council actually asked for that to be researched. The concept's relatively simple to do. 29 Palms Neighbors have been using spreadsheets and Google Maps to do it for a couple years now. It's easy to pull it up and see what's adjacent to each other. And former city developer Travis Clark also showed that it could be done. I don't know why there's such a resistance from the current staff. And of course, those that already have the VHRs that are already adjacent would have to be grandfathered in until such time as the property is sold, because the permits do not transfer out to the new owner, or the permit was allowed to expire. That's easy. Grandfathering seems to be that term seems to be getting forgotten a lot when things come up like this. Also, anyone interested in using property as VHR would have to do their due diligence and do the research. And also realtors would need to be aware and educate their buyers. There also needs to be a distinction made between owner-occupied VHRs, or owners that are living on the property, and those VHRs and houses specifically being used as businesses and houses, or businesses in our neighborhoods. I don't know why there's such a hesitation to reduce the number per financial interest. I think the council also asked for that to be looked at. Again, those owners with the max of 5 would be grandfathered until the property was sold or the permit was allowed to expire. Simple. That grandfather clause again that people seem to forget. And the reason that there appears to be no reports of disturbances is because the signs on all the VHRs say to call the agent first. Those agents aren't going to self-report themselves. The signs need to go to a city number or something. It could go to the city during work days and to the contracted firm after hours. Then there would be at least a record. I'm sure the sheriff doesn't report either to the city how many calls they get. No matter what time of day, loud music, etc., should not go beyond the property boundaries. I've had to walk up my street 5 lots away to ask someone to turn their music down because I'm inside my house and I can feel it and I can hear it. That's too loud. Thank you.
Next, we have Elaine Leslie. Eileen. Sorry.
Hi, guys. Hi. Okay, so because I was part of the study session, which I know Alex and Jennifer were not, I kind of disagree with kind of how that discussion went, because we never really got to that point of it was regarding neighbors and concerns for neighbors with how many people were on there, because the opposite argument could be if you have one single-family residence that has a short-term rental permit and it's allowed to have 8 occupants, you could potentially have 8 cars on that property at any given night over and over and over, especially in light of the fact that we have changed it to a 1-day rental is allowed. So that would be, I would dispute that specifically with regards to being polite to neighbors. We'll call it that. The other thing is, I would also having every short single-family resident on a lot be permitted. You require them to comply with the law. If you have an ADU and you have a larger house, you only have one thing that you're actually controlling, because that's the permit owner. So I think there's some confusion, unless I'm misunderstanding it. I think that's a little confusing. More importantly, to me, we know I have 3 single-family residences. We went through this. I had discussed it with Travis before I purchased the properties, before they went into escrow even. It was a dilapidated property. It was vacant. Every single short-term residence and my restaurant that I bought were empty, vacant. And I don't feel, and this is why I'm going to bring up the takings clause, because under the Fifth Amendment, this would be a taking with regards to my rights, to my right to my value of my property as far as it goes to disposal. And that means a sale. So if you were to allow me to continue, and I know I'm grandfathered in, but I also have been counting on my value if I choose to sell. The minute you put this ordinance in place, I, and apparently per Shelley, approximately 10 other property owners, would lose our value. I would currently lose $250,000 tomorrow. Now, I brought my retirement money here to buy the restaurant and to build the bar and to make this my home. And for that property to be on the scenic highway, and that I take a lot of pride in, I think it's added so much value. And I didn't really see anybody in this town before people really started doing short-term rentals that we saw improvement on these houses. And new people have moved into town because of the improvements to these properties. And we're seeing this reduction right now because investors are not coming out. They're not coming here. The word is out. They heard through all the T-bid, through all the city council meetings. I went to all the meetings. You're losing investors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, Mary Jane.
Good evening. Staff has added language limiting the number of permits per parcel to 1. The state of California allows 4 properties on 1 parcel. I feel like you are picking on Airbnbs. They're not mini motels, and I don't think you're going to find many people building 4, which would be California law, on their properties. But I do not agree with you limiting to 1. There's several people that, as been mentioned, bought with permission properties with more than 1. So they want to go sell these properties. If you put this into law, they go to sell these properties, they're losing their value of the property. And I hope that you will change that back and take off limit 1 per parcel. The other thing that I disagree with, and that's the other thing too, is revised to limit the number of permits issued per parcel to protect neighboring properties from being negatively affected by short-term rentals. How many complaints do you guys have on a daily basis of negative short-term rentals? You know, I don't believe the police are being called. I don't believe that you're getting all kinds of reports that people are not being kind to the properties or neighbors. There may be instances every once in a while, but let me tell you, on long-term rentals, there's some really rowdy neighbors. So maybe it'd be better to have a rowdy short-term person than to have a rowdy everyday person as your neighbor. The other thing that I disagree with is your having us take a class annually. Why, if there's changes being made, why can't you send out a notice to 450, however many people, of what the changes are? Why do we have to sit through a class annually when we're not causing any problems? When we know the rules, we abide by your rules. Airbnb has their own sets of rules. I mean, Airbnb, at least with Airbnb, I don't know about the rest of them because I don't use them, but they're very, very, they know what they're doing, and they don't let people into houses. I mean, they're getting tighter and tighter on their own rules. So why do you want to do something when you've already got the protection out there? Thank you.
Real quick, because myself and Leslie has something. For the classes, I have to take classes every year at work. They're the same classes.
So
they
do
very
I.
rarely get updated.
Yeah.
On anti-terrorism, sexual harassment, workplace violence, all kinds of things.
I agree.
I'm never going to be a violent person in the workplace. None of that's ever going to be me. I still have to take these classes. It takes me 3-4 days to get through these classes.
Fine.
Right? So, but on the off chance, for me taking them at work, it's the government covering their butts, right? The city's wanting to do the same thing to make sure that you, as the STR owner, are aware of any updates, changes, or anything else, and it's just a refresher. It's not sitting there for 8 hours a day. It's a refresher. It's a, here's the updates, here's the things that changes, here's some trends we're seeing. Have a nice day. Thank you for completing your class.
Okay.
And then Leslie had something.
I think that there's confusion about maybe something I've said up here regarding our study session, but it's not limiting it to one building on that parcel. It was just one permit and you could rent the whole thing. All 4 of them buildings could be used. Is why it was one permit per the one rental for that, to address a possibility. But I agree, why would it be different if it was a long-term rental? I could rent all 4 and all 4. So I understand, it's just, there's some concerns, and I posed the very same question that you did, is, well, where's all these complaints? Is it just like 4 people that we're hearing about that have, choose to express their voice? Or is this something that's really like a concern? Because, and to also go with the density, it's like their 500 was the cap, but now if we, get into addressing that, I do have my opinions, and I know I'm appointed by a city council to express those, and we give these opinions to the city council. What they can, just like they said, no, we don't have to do the insurance. They can do whatever they want. This is just kind of looking at it based off all these committee meetings that people have had and everything that we've gathered. We are trying to make the best. We're not gonna make everybody happy, but the suggestions are to be within the law and then move forward with something that's gonna benefit the city of 29 Palms. So that's the best that I'm gonna try to do for you guys up here. I might not have the same or agree with you guys, but I know it's gonna be some things you might not like what I guess my opinions will be.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for Ash, and it's up there. While I'm standing here, can I read what Ash has to say? A very good evening to all present. I am the owner of 2 vacation homes on one parcel, Via Allegra, Harmonic House and VHR 084 and 085 at Chuck's Cabin. When I applied for my VR permits in 2019-2020, I was granted VR permits for both rentals based on the city ordinance passed in 2016. Subsequently, this year, both permits were renewed by the city in May for the next 3 years. Therefore, based on the grandfather or legacy clause, properties such as mine that have already been granted 2 or more VR permits should be allowed to continue their business as VHR. I don't agree with limiting these properties to 1 permit only, even if they change ownership, as they would be grandfathered in. Furthermore, we have been paying TOTs to the city and renewing our business license each year for each of these VHR business. When the Sunnyvale Gardens Inn and Suites changed to short-term hotel rentals, the new owner was allowed to continue being short-term rentals from 2008 to 2021. I am assuming that the city applied the grandfather clause to this business to keep it short-term rentals and not convert it to its original business, long-term apartment rentals. The current owner decided to change it to long-term stays out of his choice. Hence, it should be no different for VHRs that have more than 1 VHR in a parcel that are already granted VR permits. Sincerely, Ash. I don't want to mess her name up. Maharaj? Was I close? Thank you.
Next up is Vino.
Thank you, Vice Chair. In fact, I've seen there that the city staff is going to address rewriting some of the codes. And basically, you've heard that some of the people talk about shortage of housing and people having a tough time finding affordable houses. I own quite a few businesses on the strip, which all of you all are familiar with. And my staff do find it tough to find housing. And with the cost of gasoline, car insurance, things like that, I'd like city staff to look at it and say that, you know what, if there's a VHR application within 2 miles or 3 miles of a lodging facility, we should think twice about granting it a leasing permit. So those houses can be used for staff who works on the strip and will be able to walk back and forth, because we are finding it very tough to find good employees because they can't find affordable housing, or they can't come to work. I mean, I have night orders say, hey, you know what, my car broke, I can't come. And I'm in OC. The next thing is I'd like staff to look at if there's a pool, look at the Virginia Baker Act, look at the fencing. I have a spa at my house, and I live on a postage lot in OC, and it's fence. Even the building department came there. I still had to put a fence because they said, in case I get a guest at my house and the guest has a child and the child walk out. I've seen many VHR don't have fencing at the pool. The next thing is this, what they call the cowboy pool. I mean, that's a hazard when the time you do it with the insurance and things like that. And these VHRs are businesses. Let's make our city the first city to be indecent compliant with ADA. I want the playing field to be equal to everybody. I'm a hotelier. If you are a VHR, you're just like me, you are a hotelier. You can set one set of rules for me, Vino Nathraj, and another set of rules for Ash Maraj or Johnny down the street. Let's keep the playing field fair and equal. Thank you.
Next, we have Carol Edwards.
Good evening. Bear with me, I had not intended to speak. And I'm so sorry, I don't know your name. In the cream?
Leslie?
Oh, Leslie, right in front of my face. So sorry. You had mentioned that were the ordinance to change and the multiple rentals become a single on one plot, that they'd still be able to rent those properties, the multiple properties, as one rental or multiple rentals?
It would be one rental under that
Okay, so you'd be
permit.
renting it to one group.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so basically, I was just confused because again, it sounded as though what you were saying was nothing would change except there would just be one permit rather than the 3 or 4 or 2, however many there are at this time.
But Keith, for clarification, that's for new applicants only, right? If you currently have a property where you have 3 houses on one parcel, each house has a VHR permit.
Correct.
Currently, with this, even when we pass this new ordinance, you can still rent those out separately. You're grandfathered in to the old rules because you were granted your application on the old rules. Now, if you choose not to renew a permit or it gets pulled for whatever reason, then no, you couldn't. You would have to only have one permit and rent those out all together.
As one unit.
As one unit.
As one unit.
If you don't renew your license or the grandfather clause is pulled for some other city council reason.
That's a
Hypothetically.
proposed change to go to city council.
Understood.
Yeah.
But hypothetically, in that proposed change, were that to come into play, would those homes be allowed, those 3 to 4 units, if, say there are 3 units on the property, and we're down to 1 permit, would the same thing apply if they were long-term? In other words, the individual that owns the property would be able to rent those 3 units separately as long-term rentals,
If they're a long-term rental, yes, correct.
but as a short-term rental, only as a single unit.
Because there is no ordinance kind of providing rules and regulations for long-term rentals. We have an ordinance for
No,
short-term
I understand that. I
rentals.
understand that. It's just a little confusing as to the actual application.
Right, like why does it only apply to short-term rentals versus long-term rentals?
Right.
I understand.
Um,
I feel,
Exactly. I feel like I have my own issues with short-term rentals, but when it comes to having these separate permits on the short-term rentals, it really makes more sense to me than just having one. And again, going back to the grandfathering in, once they sell the property and that's over and done with, the next individual, if they do wish to go short-term, is of course only going to have that one unit, which is going to greatly diminish the resale value of that property. And frankly, I don't mind unless the individuals are local, in which case I do mind. And that's maybe a terrible thing to say, but we have a lot of local owners that have more than one property on their plot, which is being currently used as a short-term rental, and are counting on those as, assets. That's money in their pocket.
Thank you. I have one more, Mary Jane, this is for Ash. You already spoke for Ash, correct? Okay. Can you fill out a name and address slip when you get a second?
Keith, can you pull up the Indian code map for 6799 Not Pine Springs, Quail Springs, is that the one behind it?
This is Indian Cove here.
Yeah, Ivanpah, 6799 Ivanpah. You could let me zoom in on that. We've been in this business for 3 years and managed a cluster of properties, kind of on Ivanpah, kind of mid-block, I think, between Old Dale and Sullivan. And we had a situation where 4 of them were, I think Heidi and Cindy's idea of adjacency is something to look at. I think it makes sense. We had a kind of 2 properties we managed, which were all clustered with 2 behind them, so 4. And 3 of them recently sold, which 2 of our clients and then 1 other. So I think as in now, like if that were a clustering problem, and keep in mind, like for the 3 years we've been in business, we've never had any problems with the exception of when one property owner would come to town with her family and they would just wreak holy havoc in the backyard, and I would be getting calls from my it was Heidi Aldridge, who used to have a rental over there, but they would go deal with it themselves and shut them down. But they just said it's crazy because it's the owner. But we never had issues with guests or anything like that. But if this were the case and we had some sort of adjacency requirement, as these properties are now selling or whatever, that would be a perfect thing to prohibit another clustering of 4. So I think that is something that we should really look at. And then I just wanted to also talk about the class. And I'm going to defer to Susan on this because Susan we worked with on helping to write the class, and she teaches it. But we're willing to try to make it as a refresher, as low cost as possible. And I do want to point out again that Frank came to us and we wrote this class and did it not to be anything profit driven, just cover the cost to do it for the city. So I would want to do the same thing with the refresher course. So to make it easy, and we're willing to take whatever guidance you guys have on that. But I think that was the 2 things. And then I agree on something else Cindy had said, but I'll think about it later. All right, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? All right, I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back up here. Do we have any more questions or comments?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to chat about it.
Yeah, I think enough people have spoken. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this, and I definitely think it's something that needs to be reassessed. But we're definitely going to have to sit on this for a minute and kind of, because a lot's changed since 2020. And if the numbers are going down, then we really do have to look at it. But also, affordable housing is extremely important. Making sure that people have places to stay so they can run the businesses that are here. Make sure that these people are able to, I know a lot of people don't have vehicles, and being able to walk to work is pretty important, and being able to have accessible housing in certain areas is very important. So, I don't know, that's just my thoughts.
No, you didn't. Well, Keith, do you want to, if it's okay with you, do we want to go down the line again and re-suggest? Have you guys changed your mind? You want to discuss? Is that something you want to do? Do we want to revisit this again, given your information? I feel, I could go down the line again and give you my opinion. What would you like?
If we are going to ask them the city staff to hold off on submitting this to the city council, like Keith said, we're going to need to give him some really good direction as to what we need to change.
And,
So-
and I'm gonna say this too, and, you are not obligated to make a motion tonight. You may continue this if you wish, and you may give us direction to do certain things if you want. So your options are either approve it as is, move it to the city council, make modifications, direct us to make modifications, move it to the city council, decide that no modifications whatsoever are needed, make that recommendation to the city council, or continue with direction to staff to make further modifications.
I think there needs to be, go through the list and talk about it, because there should be modification just based on how many people disagree with the parcel issue. Specifically, that one seems like the most. The adjacency and the class seem like the other two that have come up multiple times.
So
Okay, so
it's
this is what I'll do. I will make a new slide here.
But for the number on a parcel, they're all disagreeing because they think it's gonna affect their current licenses.
They're disagreeing because of the value of their property going
Well-
down for resale value.
But if you have 3 houses on one parcel, which is one lot, you can't just sell just this one house, and with us, you do a lot division and make that, now you have 2 lots.
But an
It's the
investor bu-
assumption that I am not gonna be able to get 3 of these permits and individually rent them and collect the revenue that I'm
But
hoping for.
Also, if you sell your property or your house, the Airbnb license goes away. So that person,
We have them available now, they can
we,
apply.
they can apply, yes.
That's the point of what I was making the point about numbers, they're coming down.
Right.
So it wasn't that mad rush we had at the 500 mark.
Right. It's also having to deal with, okay, we're gonna let this guy have 4 in this one area, but then next door he can't have one because it's adjacency, but then he can't have one behind him because he took up 4, and are these 4 allowed to all be together? Are they gonna have adjacency rules apply to them and they can't be on their own? Like,
Does the right of way dissolve the adjacency issue? If there's a right of way in between the 2 lots?
right.
Are those still adjoining lots or adjacent lots? Because there's a right of way in between, there's a lot of things to figure out.
I think there's more things to figure out.
This address, nope, you can't have one because you got one kitty corner here, you got one across the street.
Right, after, I mean, and you could speak to it, you sat through all the 9 meetings, and 500 was a best approach. And if the city staff or city council is bombarded with the amount of, this is absolutely insane, I have 3 on my street, and there's complaints and there's a nuisance, or is it just, I want it not here? And that's been very hard, as you can tell, for us to that's a challenge for us to, what's the correct answer to that? And then you have property owners who say, well, that's diminishing my value. And then you have, well, I don't want them to have that value. I want them to give it to somebody who wants to live there. I want my choice of your house is for somebody to rent versus what they want to do with the property. So it's a lot to balance, and it's a yin and yang. And what does the city want? City council came to us and said, hey, fix this. So, okay, here we all are. We have a lot of public opinion. What do we want? Is it the huge concern that there's many motels infiltrating the community? No? Okay, would you guys like to reconsider that we suggest to city council that they can change to multiple homes can have multiple permits on a parcel?
I think that the fact that this is a large home with the ADU that's so large and this becomes a hotel, like, I get the concern for that, but then you're also taking away from a person who is just a homeowner that wants to rent their ADU for the ability to have some income to live out here or retire here or whatever else is here, and have the ability to be more affordable to live here because they have an option to bring in income. So, like,
They still could.
They still could.
Okay,
If
so
you have a parcel,
but when I asked Keith if I have a house with 2 on it, do I have to rent out the whole property? He's saying this means yes.
This
So-
suggested,
you can't just say, you're only renting my ADU, like 1-bedroom ADU.
you can't.
You could limit, if you have 2 structures on your property, we'll issue you 1 permit. If you choose, you could limit it to only your ADU.
But next weekend, I'm going out of town and I wanna rent my house and the ADU. I can rent those as
one, as one unit.
One thing to
Yeah.
one group of people,
Mhm.
but most of the time, I'm only gonna rent out my ADU when I'm home, cause I wanna live in my home.
So the suggestion is for us to make, and it sounds like Ms. Kier wants to suggest multiple permits per parcel.
I want to suggest the ability to, even if you do one permit, have it to be broken up. So if I want to rent my house and the ADU, or if I want to rent it all as one, there's an option. If it's one permit, I don't know that has to be multiple permits. Can there be something within that permit that you can have that option to make it more
That's
accessible?
what we're,
The option, but you can't rent it, you can't go to town and rent your house to party A and your ADU to party B. You can't do that. You can rent them out to, all of it to party A or all of it to party B, but you can't separate and have two separate rental agreements with two different parties of people.
unless you're wanting to suggest that to city council.
Yeah.
Because as of it stands right now, if you were grandfathered, but per parcel. So that's what was suggested. So, and then you think, okay, well, long-term rentals, I could rent that to 4 different people. Why am I only picking on an STR?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of that? And that's because there's an assumption that it's a business being ran in a community. So you have both of these. Now what do you want to
But
do
it-
with that to city council?
Okay. I mean, it is a business in the community. That's what the short-term rental, I mean, we're allowing them, so why are we taking it away after the fact, is what I don't understand. Like, I don't understand the why.
Right. It's up to us. We can say, hey, you know what, that's a great suggestion. Why don't we go ahead and change that to, so if we're not gonna favor a STR only being restricted to one, and we can let this long-term rental have all 4 rented.
Let's go down the list of things we've changed, and there's hopefully going to be some that we all agree, say, no change or change that right away, and then we can at least narrow down what our conversation is. Can we do that real quick? Sure.
We're just waiting for you to cue it on the TV for us. So that we know what to talk about. Yes.
So, let me see here. Okay, so this was the first slide that discussed each of the issues. So, if you wanna go through this list, you.
Go ahead, lead us away.
So, limit of number of VHRs per parcel.
Per permittee.
Per permittee, right. This is going forward, once this is adopted and approved and all that good stuff, you'd have 1 parcel, you get 1 permit, you could rent out all 4 of your buildings on there, or you could rent out 1, but you can't rent them out to more than 1 group of people. Does this need to be discussed more, or do we need to make some changes to this?
I think if we're gonna, sorry.
Go ahead.
If we're gonna limit it to 5 anyways per permittee, then what do I mind if they're all on one little lot over there?
Yes. And I think that most of the comments are against it being 1 parcel tonight, so.
It's a split, and
I made a note for each one, and there's,
well, these are,
those ones, the adjacency, right?
so, commissioners, would you like to change the suggestion? And I get it. I get that it's difficult for you two because you came in after, and some of us
You
have
guys had
been
a
through a
lot.
lot of workshops and a lot of meetings individually, and you're just kind of like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but you know, it's something that city council constantly hears about. They want to know some changes. They made their own change about renters insurance. Perfect, takes that off our plate, right? So let's give it back to them. If they don't like having multiple permits in 1 parcel, then they can adjust it.
And this can be brought back later on, correctly? I mean, if we were to pass, once again, it can be revisited again after we pass.
So we're not passing anything.
or
It's a suggestion
a
to city council
suggestion.
to adopt into policy.
So I personally don't see a problem with having the same thing, having that many units on 1 property being Airbnb'd or.
Okay, so multiple
Yeah.
licenses on the same parcel.
Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna be, at the very least, it would be densely in 1 spot as opposed to. It is a kind of it's definitely a hard. It is
Here we
a
are.
a hard place to get.
And if we do that, it kills our adjacency issue, because I now have 3 Airbnbs, 4 Airbnbs on the same lot, all adjacent to each other. They all have their own permit, they're all adjacent to each other, and if we want to decide, figure out this adjacency thing, that kills it.
Yeah.
We can't then do an adjacency thing and say, well, these people are just, forget about
can't-
these ones.
But you can create something for the density that doesn't have to be adjacency in that sense. Like, there could be other options for density besides just the
Well-
density.
So you're gonna let this guy on one parcel have, and I'm just devil's advocate.
No, I
You're gonna
like
let him
wanna
have
know.
3 here, and then I move in next door, and I'm like, you know what, I wanna do that too. Sorry, you can't. So, I didn't get here 3 years ago, or I owned it, or my grandma left it to me, and here I am with this house. You just gave this guy 3, and now I can't because, so
Okay.
that's what we mean about addressing the adjacency issues. So
And that limits that person's property value.
so a little bit, yes, and it does. So a little bit of history is that we sat here and we're like, how could we control this in geospacing? And okay, we could do this and we could do this. We said, all right, well, what really doesn't matter if we're going to allow them in our city? How about just a cap at 500? They can be anywhere. And so we're like, okay, that should be okay. But if there's still a concern that a particular area is favored, and that is what the city council wants us to work on and address this density with the factor of affecting people's property value or allowance of free market to do what they want, the same as everybody else. How do you suggest that to city council to go forward?
How, can you put a cap on the area? It's like, it's up to you if your property is next door or not. And there's addition of the idea to me is the complaint of the large, massive home next to that. And in terms of building a single-family home, it's supposed to be within what the neighborhood is. So where is there, like, in terms of what you can even build?
Yeah, they
on those
followed,
lots.
when they built that home, they followed
Yeah.
all of the
So as long as they're
regulations,
following it, then
It doesn't quite fit the theme of that neighborhood.
yeah.
So you can affect my property value by doing your permit and getting your stuff secure. When I go to sell, nobody's gonna want mine because I live next to you and you have a permit, and now I
Exactly,
can't
and
get
now
one.
that's the problem too. I know, that's what I'm saying, either way, there's
Right.
an issue if it's an overbuilt
So-
property next, in a neighborhood in which there's no other
Right.
homes that are that
And
way.
STRs are being used as a home. The home is the building, that's what they're using it for, home,
Mhm.
right? They're not using it for a purpose of anything else. So it's been a struggle for me to kind of grasp why it's so bothersome to others that people are using a home in a neighborhood. And so I'm trying to understand how I can best meet everyone in the middle and do what's best for all. But people just don't like that there's enjoyment down the street, and I don't know how to help create a policy for city council.
Yeah. And I don't understand that issue as well because I have short-term rental in my close vicinity.
I think
and I
that-
hear people with music and playing and at the pool and loud. And I think I would want to do the same thing if I was in my house. I want to play my music.
Right,
and do it.
but
So
that
it's hard
house-
to figure that out.
And that house is only picked out because it's an STR
Correct.
versus a long-term rental versus me being a loud homeowner myself. So it's difficult. It's like, how do you soothe all of that by suggesting what, and legally, how do we do that? So we can give direction to staff, staff will do their best, and then, look at and weigh their options, talk to lawyers, hey, how can we do this? What are we doing? What is Palm Desert doing? What are they doing? And then go to city council and go, all right, for the city of 29 Palms, you 5 run this and want to write policy. How do you think of this? We've done some research, and then that's kind of how it goes.
And I think part of the thing in the workshop that I looked at or that I watched was also creating some sort of guidelines for, people to be able to make complaints or how they would do that. I think right now it's like you call a phone number and no one's getting it, and that's kind of the reasoning around
So
that.
the whole thing about the permit is that, yes, there's a sign on your thing, and great, I'm gonna call you. I'm giving you a chance to rectify the issue. Why would I immediately go, in trouble, calling you, and you're like, well, my gosh, I didn't even have a chance to fix that. So they're not gonna self-tell on themselves because they could have a chance to correct the problem and then there's no issue. I don't think one bad apple or rotten situation should ruin that whole homeowner's.
Hi, Planning Commission.
As the manager, I
Hold on, let's let code enforcement talk.
So, the way that the code is put together is to give the actual property manager or the homeowner an opportunity to rectify whatever situation. There is a time limit for them to respond to the person and let them know that they're working on it. Now, if that does not rectify, there's also a phone number that goes to the city that people can call. They also have the opportunity to do it anonymously online. They can submit videos, pictures, anything they have in order to let us know what's going on. The times that we're closed, especially during the weekend, when they call that, that line is operated. So we have a group, Southwest Security, they go out, they take noise meter, if there is a noise, they go and address the situation as well. So there is something in place. However, we have found that people will just continuously send complaints about properties, and then when either we go out or even some of the owners have noise meters in their homes that send them texts that say, yeah, there's a noise, but it's not meeting, the requirement, they can address it themselves. So there is all these things in place, but we find that a lot of people complain just because they don't like who's next door.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to complain about a vacation home rental than they are about a property that's actually a long-term rental. That's just what we've come across.
Thank you. That's,
I'd prefer the kids that live across the street from me not ride their dirt bikes at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. But you know what? They're renting the house.
Agreed.
But
I mean, and what you said, I mean, I agree that it's a good, the owner should have, or manager should have.
come to the podium if you're going to speak. But we're not trying to belabor this a whole lot longer.
We're done with public comment.
yeah, you probably should keep it.
Hey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna go one item by one item. So, where are we at with do we want to have more discussion and look at more options and ways to resolve the one license per parcel issue?
Yes.
I suggest that we send it to, adjust this note that if they want to have multiple, and see what city council says. And if they're only limited to 5 anyways, hope their property doesn't have 6.
Give city council.
by the state anyway, I think there was.
Give
For
city.
the state.
We're done with the public comment.
No, what's actually left?
So we want to give them an option. Say, this is option A, 1 per parcel. Option B is 1 license per property on the parcel. What do you like better?
That's the whole question of this
Right,
particular
we need to
issue.
send them a recommendation. We're not asking them to solve the problem. We're asking to say, this is our recommendation, how we want to solve this particular issue. Do you like it? They say yes, or they say no, and we come back and talk about it further. As a group, do we need to change this 1 per parcel language in the development code?
I think it should not be 1 per parcel, and I think that we should look at the adjacency issue and its own.
Well, okay, those are 2 separate
density,
issues.
Sorry, separately.
Those are 2
resolve
separate
some of
issues.
this.
So
Okay.
the question is
For
what?
the parcel, I think it should be able to have more than 1.
Yeah, okay, so the question is, it's either a vacation license per building or per parcel.
So then,
Per
That's the
building.
question.
but if I have a house and I have a pool house that is separate from my house, do I have to get another license for the pool house so they can utilize the pool house and the shower I have in the pool house?
A
No.
pool house is not a single-family dwelling, so it would not qualify for a vacation home rental permit. You're welcome. And if you got, you could limit it to 1 permit. You can do 2 permits per parcel. You would never get 4 permits per parcel because a junior ADU is not it's not a standalone single-family home, so it would not qualify. So you could never get 4 permits per parcel.
And the ordinance prohibits attached units from getting vacation home rentals.
So I'm still okay with the 1 per parcel, but if the majority is not, we figure out what to write here and make it so we're all good.
Well, Mr. Director, it doesn't matter to me. If there's 4 on 1, it's 4 on 1, but I know that that's not a popular opinion.
We're looking for direction from the planning commission, so.
That would be my opinion, is you could,
Do we want to make this
Per parcel or per building?
per single family residence?
Yes.
I would say I'm kind of leaning more towards per house.
Let me just explain. So our code already requires it to be a standalone, single-family home, so detached from any other structure. So even if you had a primary residence and a detached accessory dwelling unit, that would limit you to 2 permits. Because attached structures would not get a permit, and junior ADUs wouldn't qualify because they're a small ADU inside the primary unit. So those would not qualify for VHRs. So you really would be limited to your primary unit and your detached ADUs.
So can we add that language of, does it need to be that specific?
Yes, we can.
Great. And it's 2 then.
2 per parcel.
Maximum of 2 per parcel.
but what, I have a 3rd building. What about my 3rd building? What difference does it make? I just don't get what difference does it make. If you can let a long-term, all 4, you have 3 buildings, you have 4 buildings, and all of 4 could be rented by a different 1, 2, 3, 4. We could all live there separately with all our cars and all of our stuff for a short-term rental. How do you feel about letting 4 different people rent that?
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh-huh.
I agree with that. There is sorry, I'm not great at public speaking. I don't have a problem with having multiple, being able to rent them out individually. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not 100% sure on the effects of that, but only time will tell. And I think, yeah, I have no. That's what I think.
So staff would have guidance to,
Rewrite this to 1 license per single-family residence, no matter how many are on a parcel.
well, it would be limited naturally to 5.
Well, it's a 4 because.
It's
Well,
4.
5 total. I could only do 5 total permits.
That's per
So my cap,
entity,
no
right?
matter what, would be 5.
Correct.
So if I can just say something, if you guys don't mind, because I've been processing these since 2015. So the code is silent on this right now, so we do allow them both. If you want to rent your units out separately, then you have to have separate licenses. If you want to, if you have 2 homes on the property and you want to rent the property out to just 1 family, then you get 1 license. So those are your options. I mean, currently, that's the way
It's
that
just
policy has been.
One license per single-family unit.
Well, how it's currently written doesn't
So
seem
it's
to be the problem, so it's fine. So
So
why is this a
It's
discussion?
silent.
But it's silent, so
It
we're
doesn't-
trying to clean it
doesn't-
up.
Doesn't say yes or no.
Right.
So,
So right now, that's.
so
Detached.
1 license per single-family unit, no limit on a parcel. How many are on a parcel?
So it's either or.
Yes, it's
Either
one per building. If you got a 10-acre plot and you got 30 houses on your 10-acre lot.
Well, you only get 5.
I own
Fine.
5, my brother owns
Yeah.
5, my sister owns 6, 4,
Right.
4,
But it's
whatever.
1 parcel.
So
No,
what
but we're
we're
changing it.
okay. So what we're saying is
Just
is
1
we can,
license per building.
1 license per building, and I think I heard someone say if you want to just do 1 license covering the parcel, you can still do that,
still
or
do
you
that.
want to that is still it's a choice. So the answer is both.
Both.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There
Okay.
is no distinction regarding the property, regardless
Right.
of what it has. other than there's multiple buildings I could do permit per
Okay,
building.
so
You
what?
can either
what-
permit them separately, or you can permit them as
one.
one license, but if you just have one license, it has to be rented out to one group.
One person,
one
that
family.
Okay,
one
so
rental.
that's the direction we're getting.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good neighbor classes.
And these numbers,
Unbiased.
and these numbers are going down as we, and we will only tell if they're going down further, or if they're just going to keep, or they're going to plateau and keep staying where they're at, or they're going to keep further dropping, or
It's impossible to know.
exactly. So we pivot as we can as it comes, basically. And I know everything you guys have gone through because I've been watching it for a while, and I know there's not pleasing everyone, and I know how hard all of you have worked very much on trying to make sure, because we all live here, and we all want to make sure that everyone in the audience and everybody is happy the best that we can. I know I'm new to this, and I can't speak for everyone, but by working with you guys for as short as I have, I know you guys do try as hard as you can. So there will always be somebody who is not happy with the decision that we've made. And that is with everything that we do in everywhere. So I appreciate all your guys' patience. We're trying to figure this out because this is a very important topic for a lot of people.
So what's the direction on the neighbor class?
Good neighbor classes.
Leave it as written.
Or
Move
would it
next.
help to write it as to your initial application, you take the full-blown class, annual renewals, you take a refresher class? Would that help to alleviate the burden of taking said class?
It's a little. We'll figure out something.
That delineates the difference and maybe a lower cost, right? That's the whole point of
Well, that's
that.
the cost is set by.
The cost is not set by us.
Is-
And we could try to do
Yeah.
something where it could be a pre-recorded thing where they could take just a
Yeah.
simple, I took the test, whatever.
I wonder, is it like, is the reason because you just want the understand, agree to the updated
Yes.
information? Because then can they just like click and sign that they understand, they watch the video and they say, here, I understand and agree to this. And then if they don't do it, then they understood and agreed, and that's the legal way to make sure they agree to it. Can it be simple like that?
It's.
It can definitely be.
How long is the original class?
This class is about 60 minutes, and then she does a question.
Okay, so it's a 60-minute to take your original one. How long could, if we made this refresher class half an hour? I mean,
That'd be awesome.
it's an hour of your life. My goodness, it takes me 4 days to do all my required training for work every year.
I also, even for tattooing, I have to take the bloodborne pathogen class every year, and it never changes. And that takes me close to 3 hours sometimes.
So, okay, we have a little bit. So, conditions of approval. We didn't have too many issues of conditions of approval, correct?
No, please meet them before. it can
We're
go.
gonna start issuing those, and basically they're gonna be mostly boilerplate. We're gonna be very explicit in the conditions of what is allowed, what buildings are allowed, and how many bedrooms are allowed to be used, et cetera,
Okay.
et cetera.
Sounds good.
I just wanted to make a note that I'm going to add one condition of approval, and it's in regard to the storage of recreational vehicles.
Gotcha. Next slide. Lowering the limit of one license per permittee.
No
I
change.
think we are all okay with 5, right? We didn't have any qualms.
I'm fine with that.
No change.
You
No.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Single families, houses built for vacation, straight to vacation home rental.
No change necessary.
I do not see a problem with that. They're still building a home that at some point in time could turn into a rental. Making them rent it first just seems like we're just kicking the housing can down the road, and it's not gonna be like they're gonna rent the house for $600. It's gonna be a $2,000 a month rental anyway. No changes?
No change.
Okay. National Park buffer, we didn't discuss it. There wasn't a lot of
No changes.
no changes. Density per neighborhood, my favorite topic of discussion.
The only thing I could come up with is if you just calculate how many homes are in each district, and if it was that pressing of an issue, you could go, okay, only this many, and whatever that means for staff to track that. I just think the 500 cap met its need, and I don't see an issue with density,
And
so.
I agree, and even if we do come up with a density adjacency policy, right? It's not gonna fix the current issues that several neighborhoods have. And that's what they want. They want us to fix the neighborhoods that have the problems want those fixed now. But if we do a adjacency policy, city council's still gonna allow those ones that are already there to be there until they don't renew or they sell the house or something to that effect. So it's not gonna fix the existing issue for those certain neighborhoods.
So in order to give Keith direction to do something that the city council has asked us to do is look into density, the suggestion could be that we track it on a map and whatever they think is fair.
I think it,
Forgive me, but I don't know what that means.
So,
They're
So-
gonna pick and choose who cannot have a house based off, I can't have one adjacent to this property. It just seems unfair to me as a homeowner that you could limit me because there's a one next to me. So that's a very difficult thing. It's not impossible, and nobody's saying we don't wanna work on this, but to what avail is that density controlling? I'm having a hard time with this one.
If I could come up with an easy solution that was fair to everyone, sure, great, good and dandy. But I have racked my brain for well over almost 2 years trying to figure out how to tackle this, and I can't figure it out. It's not as easy as Cindy makes it sound. You just say, okay, house A, now houses B, C, all the way around can't have one because I have one.
Yeah.
But
And I want to point out too that some parcels are bigger than others, and some parcels have more adjacent properties than
Yes.
others.
Or I came to town and I bought 2 properties right next to each other because I want to make those vacation home rentals till I stop making money, then I'm gonna do long-term rentals, but now I can only do one. I don't see a way to do it. So I think for the density, we just tell city council, no change.
500 cap.
500 cap.
And not trying to not listen to, they're asking us to help them out with this, and obviously they're getting pressure from it. And, if they want to move forward, a system could be put in place, and you're going to have a lot of have-nots, and people are going to not be able to do something with their property. And how do you justify fairness in that? That's the hard part of coming up with a whole policy that we could publish as a city and protect ourselves against that by how. It's very difficult for me to put that together.
I mean,
Unless that's allowed and you're just like, sorry, you can't, but you can, and you can't, because I sat up here and said geospacing 300 feet, geospacing 500 feet, geospacing 4 houses down. I don't know how to do that.
yeah.
no action.
You could tell them that I said that.
Next on the list, Keith.
By the way, this is all going to be per the planning commission's recommendations.
Yes. So please, if you guys have something that is an issue, a concern to you, speak up. We can, like Keith said, we can defer this to the next meeting or 2 meetings down the road to where we can think about things more. We don't have to make these recommendations today. If we want to defer this, because it is a complicated issue, and there's a million things we're trying to fix in here, and we want to get it as good as possible, we can defer this for a couple of meetings if we choose to.
I mean,
We
when it
don't have to make the recommendation to send this to city council today.
When it comes to the density, for me, I can't say what it, I see how there's no possible way to do any of those things, so I agree. But is there someone out there that's doing this in any sort of great way that?
Are you
we
talking
know
about
of?
other jurisdictions?
Yeah.
different jurisdictions do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are some jurisdictions in the Coachella Valley that have completely phased out short-term rentals and says whatever you have, we're not issuing anymore and we're not renewing any permits. That is a very draconian, they have the right to do that. Others, I did look at Palm Springs. I don't have it on the screen, but I looked at Palm Springs. They did a tier system and a neighborhood system. So if you rent 6 times or less, that does not count as far as the number of short-term rentals out there. But they do count per their established neighborhoods. So they have a chart and all that. So, neighborhood A can have 200 units, and then they have a chart that has how many they've issued.
How many city staff does Palm Springs, and how much time does that take them, do you think?
I can tell you they've got a lot more staff than we do.
Right.
I don't know the exact number of staff, but
Well,
that's a fair statement.
So if it's lawful to say no, then per district is maybe the easiest since we don't have defined communities. And then you could just put it out there. We only allow so many per 500 in this and this and this and this and this.
Can there be,
Spread out.
yeah, per like a cap per district, yeah, but like based off of how many houses are actually in that area,
But they still
And-
could all end up in that area. So the concern is like, well, then everything will be in this one area.
Yeah.
So how do you, but if we could say no, then I guess we would just have to create the mapping situation and then determine what would be fair. And then tell people no,
I mean,
if we're allowed to do that.
Yeah,
Then we
I
tell
think
them
if
no.
you cap it in the zone of which, if of the 500, however many are only here at this point, and then you say, okay, here's how many per zone, then it would spread it out.
It would not spread them
No?
out originally.
But moving forward,
Moving forward for new ones?
Yeah.
For the
like no more allowed
40
in
we
this
have
zone, it's
available,
maxed
for the
out.
40 we have available, yep. They couldn't go in Indian Cove, they couldn't go in wherever else, right? So that for those 40, sure, but that still leaves the problem that the existing neighborhoods have with the density, because that's the problem.
Well, if they're all
Some-
gonna be grandfathered in, it's not like we're gonna make these huge changes anyways. So how do we impact the change
Going
now?
forward?
So everyone's grandfathered in if they continue to renew. How do you address that concern of too many in my area?
So we would have to come up with, and district is the only way to do it, because we don't have really, we have some defined neighborhoods, but we don't have all defined neighborhoods. So it'd have to be a district. So we'd have to say, okay, each district gets,
Well, how many homes are in that? And then how do you break that down
Well,
mathematically?
each district in theory has roughly the same population.
roughly the same population. So each district gets, there's 5 districts, each district gets 125 vacation home rental licenses.
Well,
Now-
households is different than rentable single-family residences. So district could have apartment buildings.
You can't do it vacation home rental
Correct.
apartment.
So you're gonna, it's almost like, okay, well, that doesn't solve anything, because now these can't even rent them. So.
Well, I mean, it
you're
would be-
still naturally gonna have not that many there anyways.
would it be based off of usable property, the single home dwellings, correct?
Well, no, but the districts aren't set up that way. The districts are set up by population. So it's
Right.
roughly, there's the same amount of people in each of the 5 districts.
But
So-
not the
but not-
qualified
not-
housing
Not
for
the
it.
qualified housing.
I get what
So
you're
the
saying.
only, unless you're gonna go, okay, well, District 1 has 3,000 single-family homes and 20 apartments. District 3 has 2,000 single-family homes and 1,200 apartments. So District 3 gets less than District 1.
But they naturally already get less because they're not eligible. So
Yeah.
you're still gonna have all these over here, so.
They're still gonna
so
be
how-
compiled.
Yes. So out of 500, out of what's available as a single-family residence, how do I spatially not get them together?
We'd say, okay, the neighborhoods that complain. Indian Cove, I don't know what other ones complain. No more vacation home rentals in Indian Cove. It's been annexed.
And now you just affected how many, 400
Exactly.
home property values.
Exactly.
Because you dropped the desirability of the potential,
But it's
potential, yeah.
It's, I mean, it's not, the numbers for our vacation home rentals are going down. It's not, I don't think it's drastically affecting housing prices right now anyway. But still, if we're trying to appease the groups, the neighborhoods that are having the hardest time with this, we just say, okay, no more in that area. I don't agree with that, but that's a way to do it.
I get you, you're trying to create that more, I always say this word wrong.
Moratorium?
Yes. But to what avail? What is that settling? What is?
I mean, there's, 46 more available licenses?
35 if you,
With the 7, okay, yes,
Yeah,
35. with the
35.
7.
Let's just say it's 500.
I think
And
that,
there's,
sorry.
and there's such an uproar of density issue that is our problem to solve, apparently.
The uproar is for the existing density. And we, as a group, as a body, cannot solve that. That's city council. If they want to say, we could,
They're asking for us to make a plan, which sounds like we would say, staff, please generate a map with all of them, and we want everyone 1,000 feet apart. If you're within 1,000 feet, sorry about it. Like, that's literally what is being asked. Is that a great plan? No. Does our city want to do that? No. It's hard to say that, we're not up here saying it's impossible. I'd like everyone to understand there's been tons of thought into this. And if, they want us to explore it more and say those exact words of putting finite things of 1,000 feet from permit to permit, there you go, everyone's grandfathered in. 47 more people though, watch out, you can't go within these 1,000 feet.
but if we did 1,000 feet, that's gonna push them to the communities that have larger lot sizes and stuff because they're further apart.
But only 47 more. Have to be very clever about the way that they're gonna go about it.
Right, so I personally think the 500 cap and market conditions are gonna dictate the density issue. I don't like agreeing with Jim, but I've been saying that enough, and me trying to work a way around it enough, I can't. I think the 500 cap and then the marking conditions are gonna limit the density issue at some point in time.
Unless all 47 go to one place right now and make those people upset. So,
Could you just say if more than 2 were bordering, have commissioner, have opportunity for public comment?
Yeah, I was wondering about like.
We do that, we do that anyway,
Yeah.
with that 300-foot letter that gets sent out to everybody.
But if you put that in code, then you're covering, you're saying no more than 2, and then if it is more than 3 bordering, then you have to get final approval, and at least solves the problem you're addressing. The
But-
sensitivity of the neighborhood, I'm on their side, and that's what, I get it, I can see how it could be a problem. But just if you I just agree with you guys as well, that it's impossible, I said in those meetings too, it's impossible to come up with a
It's,
fair solution, but at least if, but.
Someone's gonna be disappointed, there isn't
Yeah, there's no easy answer.
The easy answer is 500 cap.
so we've discussed it, and 500 cap is our resolution.
yes. Unless you guys
And then if
have-
they
I
would
mean,
like
and-
us to come back with, no, please make the GPS map and do a precision of distance.
I mean, so currently, the letter goes out to everyone and then people have or no?
Yes, so
Currently,
currently,
right?
Yes.
And so-
a letter goes out to people within a 300-foot radius, and they can say, oh, heck no, I do not want this next to me. But
It
in
has,
order for us to deny that thing, they have to have already had the license and have been doing something incorrectly or improperly or had noise complaints and stuff for us to say, yep, we're gonna revoke that license. So that is what I think needs to be corrected, is the appeal for a new vacation home rental process.
Well, when we've heard those, we're looking for a finding, and the finding would have to be a violation of code.
Yep.
There was no findings of violation of code, so you cannot approve the appeal of that vacation home rental.
Correct.
So,
Because it hadn't been issued yet.
so the I don't want that next to me can't be something
Can't
because
be
our
the
code
Okay,
doesn't
so
support that.
just so everyone is aware, we have been working internally about what may be what level of violation is equal to what kind of punishment. It is something we do internally and we're working with our code enforcement on it. What we can do is I can bring that back to the next time, and we can show you the work in progress. It is not a planning commission action. You can certainly give us feedback. For instance, not taking the trash out on trash day would be a minor violation. Having unpermitted bedrooms could be a major violation, for instance. But that's why we do inspections. So if I'm making this scenario up, let's say that there's a 4-bedroom house and they've been advertising it for 8 bedrooms. That's obviously not per their conditions of approval. That's not per their license. Perhaps that might be a revocable offense.
But
And
I think she's talking about before it even goes through.
Before,
The
like if I'm
radius is
like if
300.
I'm getting like a minor use permit, like I'm a commercial space and you have a process in which it gets approved, is there something like that for the?
Yes, they get, everyone within that 300 radius gets a note saying, hey, they're gonna, want
Apply to do
if
Airbnb.
a vacation rental permit.
You as a resident can appeal that, say, no, I don't want this to be an Airbnb. But us sitting up here have not had a legal way to approve the appeal and deny the application.
Based
because
off-
they haven't been issued an application, so they haven't broken any of the ordinances.
I see.
And
So
any decision the planning commission makes is also appealable to the city council.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that we are changing that section for appeals so that it's going to be, you can only make an appeal in compliance, just like every other appeal. The permit has to be issued before you can file an appeal.
And
There
then-
has to be some sort of violation.
And then we would have the ability to deny that application or to approve the appeal, right? Because they would, if they came to us with proof. On August 1st, they had a huge party, they were cranking music till 3 o'clock in the morning. On August 7th, same thing, da-da-da-da-da-da, and they had proof, and we all determined that was enough proof to revoke the license, suspend the license, fine them, whatever we choose to do, then that appeal could get approved.
And so that's not currently happening, or for the people in the area that have the issue with density, that's not, they don't have any complaint that's coming in like that?
I'm hearing 4 different questions
I
at
guess
once.
for me, I don't have the full picture, so on this specific topic, and I see how this was obviously discussed a lot and came to the fact where you don't have a pathway forward. I obviously don't know the answer, but I don't know enough about all the process to give my answer on that.
You know, we do have, our code enforcement division, and we have a representative here, that does take in complaints, okay? On vacation rentals and other things.
I think you had
Okay.
stepped out, but Miss Vanessa did let us know that sometimes she might receive a complaint because people just want to complain that it's a.
Well, and I was gonna say something similar to that and say not every complaint is actionable.
A verified, legitimate complaint.
Right.
How many do we get a month?
We currently have 75 active cases, and I can tell you last weekend, we had about 15 come in for vacation home rentals, and it was only 3 vacation home rentals. And it was the same person just doing the same thing over and over. So that's one of the things that, I understand what she's saying about the 300 radius, but I do also the home occupation permits, and we send out the radius notifications, and nobody ever sends anything or says anything until they're already there working and already doing what they're doing. So it usually doesn't come until after the fact. We just don't look at the notices they receive.
Yeah.
So that's also a part of an issue, because we do notify people about things.
It
and
is
we do
sent out.
Notify them all the time about different things that they can do if they have an issue, but they
Okay, so I think as a group, we're okay with the 500 density and that being, or 500 cap and that being our density measures? Or do we want to try to preempt what city council might ask us and try to come up with a way to do the density issue for the 35 remaining permits?
I would like to suggest that the word impossible be removed and just say discussed at length. And
That's fine.
500,
We-
okay.
We can certainly modify that language. I know that
Okay.
that was
That-
problematic, so we'll modify that language.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
No, yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry, so you're all okay with just leaving it at the 500?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Response times for nuisance complaints. That's an hour, right? We left it an hour. Did we change that to
Correct.
half an hour? We left it an hour?
No change.
No change. Or do we have changes?
No.
For the new commissioners?
Remember, it's a response time.
Yes.
It doesn't mean, it means that the owner of the property or the property management has up to an hour to respond to whoever's complaining to
Yep.
them. The resolution might take a little bit longer. It doesn't mean that they have to show up at the property either, because that's another misconception. People think that the owner has to show up. They do not. They just have to call or contact the person that complained and try to find a solution.
Storage or recreational vehicles. We didn't have any issues with that, right?
No.
Issue of additional permits such as film or temporary use permits.
As written is good.
Yes.
That was, that's the direction so far. So what is the commission's desire? Do you want us to make these edits and have you take one last look at it so you'll continue this discussion? Or are you going to trust us to make these modifications and send it on to the city council?
I think just because this is such a hot topic, not that I want to delay this any further, but bringing it back just so we can have one last read through of it. Does everybody agree to that? Just to,
I would like to send it forward.
I would also, but I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence.
It's
What
due,
do
it's
you,
diligent.
what do you two think?
The only one that I felt that way about was the density, because I don't have all the information. I think the fact that if they come back and say, we do want you, like, I like what you were saying, if they come back and say,
Well, that
really
can
want you
still
to-
happen with that going forward.
yeah,
So-
then we can do something about that. I don't think there's a way to retroactively handle it, even, like, there's someone gonna be unhappy no matter which way you cut it. So if they want us, that would be my thought on the density. So you're changing the language to what specifically?
Nothing,
There's no changes.
So, yes, but you said you're gonna remove the impossible.
But that's
Yeah,
just
that's a
in the
wording change,
recommendation.
not a language change.
And then,
That's in the staff report. That's not
So-
in the actual ordinance.
If you go back one or two, what we kind of discussed, what, would eventually need to happen tonight is that we would need to either make a motion and submit with the changes as written to move forward, CEQA exempt, and, city council, refer to city council. Another thing we could say is, no, thank you, let's have more time. Another thing we could say is, as it was previously written, send it forward, so,
Yeah. So we should send it forward.
with the changes.
okay, so I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I motion that we find the project exempt from CEQA. We adopt the resolution with the changes that were typed and board recommendation for the city for adoption.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cure,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Paulhana,
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker.
Aye.
4-0 approved.
Okay, moving on. We don't have any discussion of potential action items. Community Development Director updates?
I actually have a couple. A few of you still need to complete some of your mandatory training courses that
I
we
have
mentioned
one.
earlier.
I have one that I have to finish. I know.
I wasn't going to point fingers.
I know I do.
I have ample free time for the next couple of weeks, so I will
I'll
get
film
on
If-
that.
if
before
you
the
need-
next meeting.
If you need to know which trainings you need to complete, let me know, because I can share it with you. Otherwise, I'll just leave it to your judgment to complete that by the time of the next meeting.
I will.
And the other item is our new building is up and running. We did a soft opening last week. We still have some cleaning and filing and stuff to do, but it's open to the public. So you come visit us if you want to take a quick look. We're going to go over there anyway while we go pack up and get ready to leave. But you're welcome to come take a peek if you like.
Are you just grabbing your lunch pail and bolting out the door, or is this like, okay?
But our lunch pail's over there now.
I'll count it as my
Oh,
third
and
walk for the day.
and next planning commission is we also have our homeless committee on the next one.
Mhm.
Okay,
Which is this
which is the 17th.
17th, yes.
I
So
should be.
is it, wait, no, it can't just be homeless committee, right? Or it is, it's just,
No, it's planning commission and homeless
right,
committee.
okay.
Mhm.
No study sessions. Do we have anything else before I adjourn the meeting? The meeting is adjourned.
Time we got. 7:05.